gonna add some music to the end of the video here as we go out, but I figured what better soundtrack than this. Well, no sooner I get set up out here. It's been raining on and off all day today, and I'm starting to feel a light sprinkle already. It was 0% chance of rain for the next few hours and only like 10 or 20% later, but I'm probably gonna get rained on yet again. But I figured I'd come on out here, and since the body is staying in the garage anyway, and this is real easy to just shove inside there, I figured let's go ahead and get some more work done on this engine today. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to upgrade that jet. I can't remember where I stopped off at. I think it was like a 135 or something, and I wanted to go to like a 137.5 or a 140, because when I ran that throttle wide open it was pretty good until it would get, you know, all the way, and when it should be running on the main jet it seemed like it was running a little lean. When I choked it off with my hand covering the opening a little bit, it would then rev up like it's supposed to and seem to run properly. So I would say it's still running too lean, and that's what we're going to have to do, is upgrade that main jet. Now the main jet upgrade is pretty easy. We're going to take the top off the carburetor so we can go ahead and retrieve it. It comes out through the port on the side of the carburetor over here. But enough talking about that, we're going to go ahead and do it. So anyways, please like this video, please comment, please pluck that little dingle belly next to the subscribe button after you've hit that subscribe button. That way you get updates every time I upload a new video. Now check out Duckman Cycles VW Garage Facebook page, and if you'd like to email me, duckmancycles@duckshit.net. Thanks for watching. We'll be back in just a second. Okay, before we get started, I figured we should try a couple things. I'm trying to settle some people's questions that they keep asking by giving them suitable answers. And the question I keep getting asked is, what do the other spark plugs look like? And I've actually pulled them all out. And if you can see what I see, they're kind of brownish black, a little darker than they typically should be for what should be a normal mixture. But it really hasn't been run all that long yet, and these also aren't new plugs, so these could be whatever we were looking at from when the engine used to be running by its previous owner. So I can't guarantee that. They are looking a little lighter than they did the other day, but that was number 3 that I'm comparing it to, and number 3 hadn't been running properly anyway, so what would look like it was kind of shiny and black is no longer shiny and black, and is actually kind of brownish black, and seems to be lightning in color, which would be a good thing. It's going to need some more running or a new set of spark plugs before I can commit to that color. I think it's okay. I don't think spark plug color is going to be an issue, so we're going to drop that one right now. But next, what we're going to jump on right here is we're going to do a compression test. So since all the spark plugs are out, you can see 3 and 4 right there. You can see number 1. This is number 2. Got them all out and about. So we're going to go ahead and get this compression tester hooked up, and let's see what we get in here for compression. I think the engine runs fine. This is not a big concern of mine, but we're going to do it because you guys want to see it. So here it comes. Alright, let's go ahead and hook up the compression tester that I have right here. Get this camera so I can see it. Little gauge, extension hose. Put it in the cylinder number 1 first. Okay, connect this guy on here. That's it. Wish I could leave this out where you guys can see it go up. If it goes up, maybe there's no compression, right? Alright, obviously that's not going to work. One of those things I should have planned out before I started recording. There we go. Can you see that all right? Sure can. All right. Now you probably noticed that before recording I actually removed the throttle return spring off of the carburetor and pushed the throttle open all the way. And that's important because if it can't get air, there's nothing to compress. So I've got that one set. Let's go ahead and crank them. Alright, looks like we got 125. That's actually really good. That's actually really good, but the key is, you don't just want good, you want consistent. You want them the same all the way across the board. But wow, that was some pressure. All right, excellent. Try cylinder number 2. And mind you guys, I'm actually doing this with the valves not adjusted since the last time. If you recall, the valves are a little bit noisy. They were probably closing, but I'm sure the gaps are too big on them for some reason. All right, here we go. Cylinder number 2. Fire in the hull. And that's showing 150. That's a pretty wide variance between 1 and 2. That's actually not a good thing. But they're both pretty high compression. Let's see what we get on the rest of them. I'm suspecting anywhere between 125 and 150, and if that's what we get, and we're probably okay. Alright, cylinder number 4. Not sure why I just skipped 3, but we'll get back to 3 in just a minute. Alright, here we go. $145-ish. I'd say that's pretty good. Now more like 140. Okay. I got 140. So anyways, we're between 125 and 150 on all cylinders. 2 of them are at 140, 1 is at 150, and 1's at 125. I'm kind of surprised that cylinder number 1 is the low one. I figured it would have been number 3, because that's typically the one that gets hot and has the issues. But anyway, we're going to test number 1 one more time, just to be sure there's consistency, make sure I didn't do anything wrong. Okay, here we go. Stay. Cylinder number 1, take 2. I don't think it's sealing properly, because I'm looking at the number here and it's falling slowly. But once again, I got 125, that's where it peaked, and then it dropped. Let's look at the valves in here real quick, just because. Make sure that they are closing all the way. It looked to me like they're closing just fine. I guess we just have one low cylinder. But still, if I'm getting 125 psi, which is reasonably good, and all the rest of them were just a little bit higher than that. Alright, one more time. That time I got 130 and I squeezed it and messed it up as I was trying to read it. Try again. I don't think this thing is sealing quite right either. We got a bunch of stupid little problems going on here. Now it's not even 120. Anyway, I'm not buying that. I think it's the compression tester here just not sealing up on this cylinder correctly. In fact, it's not even threading in all the way. It's not hitting the rubber thing. It only turns about twice when it acts like it's sealed, and I don't think it is. Might just be something in the threads. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's going in all the way. Yeah, I can actually feel a little air coming out from around the spark plug hole. So it's not going in there all the way. So anyway, I got 130 on this last go around. I think that's pretty well in par. It just happens to be one of the lower cylinders, and it's because this thing just isn't sealing right. I don't know why that is. It's just got to be an imperfection in the threads on the spark plug, perhaps. In fact, now it doesn't even want to come out. No, it's stuck. Alright, I got bad threads and a leak in that side. So, that's got something to do with why that won't sit in there. Let me grab a spare of needle nose pliers and try to work that thing out. That was that noisy car that just passed, and it's not noisy anymore. I'll bet they probably just replaced the power steering pump. And then I discovered that, you know, it needs fluid. Come on, come out of here. Alright, why isn't this turning? There it goes. Yeah, it's like 2 turns and it falls out. And I'm looking at the threads and I'm counting 4. So it should be about 4 turns until it hits the rubber gogi that's on there, and it's not hitting it. So, yeah, we had a leak around this. Now let me try running that spark plug back in there and make sure that there's not an issue running that thing in. Yeah, those threads don't feel good on there. That's what it is, it's just not sealing properly. And now the spark plug is not even threading in straight. There it goes. I got it in about 2 turns and I start to feel resistance. Once again, there should be more turns than that. Yeah, it's just stiff. It's not cross-threaded. It's just really stiff. Yeah, no doubt. It's going in straight. And it's in there. Okay. I'm going to say that that's just had some funky threads on there. I probably should have chased it with a thread chaser, but I don't have one for that thread. The next time I pull out that spark plug hole, we'll look at it again, but I think it's okay right here this time. Just going to leave it be. Don't mess with what ain't broken, if you know what I mean. Alright. Let's go ahead and wind this thing back around and check our valve lash on here. That was something we had a problem with because the engine seemed kind of noisy. We're going to check that real quickly too. Let's go ahead and put our carburetor return spring back on because we don't need that off anymore. And I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the battery and shut off the battery charger because we don't need that either. And you may be asking, hey, why do you have a battery charger on your battery? The reason why is because the battery is really not in very good shape. It's actually the old one from the fastback, and it needs a little bit of charge on it before it ever even starts the vehicle. So it's using that temporarily on here until I get this thing running and situated. Then I'll put a brand new battery in the car when it's ready to drive. Until then, I can't see sitting on the battery. It's just going to be on the shelf here for maybe up to a year before I get this car running and driving, you know, completed. It just doesn't make sense to have a battery just die, if you know what I mean. Looking at the valve lash here, around the top dead center on cylinder number 1. You can see this one is really loud. This one's kind of quiet. And putting that in there, putting the feeler gauge up in here, I can see that it's not grabbing like it was. This one also, yeah, the intake side also opened up a bit. Now I don't know if it just opened or if I used the wrong damn feeler gauge, but we're gonna go ahead and fix it because it's not right. Yeah, and if I remember correctly, we're using a 1/2-inch wrench on here. Yeah. Because the nuts on here appear to have been changed out by somebody or something goofy. Okay. All right. Almost there. Oh, the mosquitoes are out here already too. Only February, I already got mosquitoes on me. Okay, this is not quite as tight as it should be. After this one, we're going to reposition this camera because I am not happy with the angle I have to work at here. All right. Much better. That has the slight resistance that it's supposed to have when you pull the feeler gauge in between the valve and the rocker. It's just a little bit of drag on it. That's how it's supposed to be. Okay. Next one. First reposition camera. Now, I said in the last video, but still 3 or 4 people commented anyway. I said there's a whole lot of smoke coming out from underneath the right-hand side, cylinder number 1. That's because there's a little bit of an oil leak from the valve cover. I mentioned that in the video. Everybody seemed to miss it. But anyway, this valve cover, as you see, I just put it back on. It does need a new cork gasket, and I need to clean off the valve cover. So that's still an additional task that I need to get to. It's leaking just enough to make a mess on cardboard. It's really not a whole lot, but that's the only leak on this engine. So I will be addressing that sometime in the near future, just not yet. That's part of the cleaning up the valve covers and getting them painted process. Okay, the way I see it, now is a good time to get this engine running, now that I've got the valves adjusted and they look correct. The left-hand side, 3 of the 4 valves are off. The intake valve on cylinder number 3 was the only one that was set correctly. On the other side, over here on the right, there's only one that was really off on the right-hand side, and that was the intake on cylinder number 1. But I went ahead and adjusted them all anyway, just to make sure that everything is good and tight. That way there was proper resistance on it. I mean, they seemed good, but I made them just a little bit better. Now they're a little bit snugger on that tool than they were before. So anyway, let's go ahead and get this thing fired up and see what she sounds like with valves adjusted properly before we get into playing with carburetor settings and upgrading the jet, because we don't know if that's part of the issue until I actually get the valve problem straightened out. I didn't know of whether or not that could affect the mixture, and actually yes it could. So now that that's done, let's go ahead and get this thing fired up and see how she behaves. Before we do anything else, let's put our spark plugs back in. You can run without no spark plugs. You'll probably notice that when I tighten the spark plugs, I don't grab the end of that handle, because that will way over torque them and potentially strip them. I have a tendency to hold it close to the middle. I just put a little bit of twist on them until I feel them bite, and then just a hair more. It is proper. The proper adjustment, of course, is to do it with a torque wrench, but this is good enough. When you do it a million years, you get the right feel for it. And by the way, I have never, ever, ever stripped out a spark plug hole, Carlos. Alright, let's go ahead and get the battery hooked back up. And we've got to hook back up our fuel. And let's make this sucker run. Oh, where's my giant screwdriver that I use for starting? Crapula. Found it. Hear the fuel filling up in the carburetor. These are all good sounds. Alright, let's see what it does. Well, that started up pretty easy. And it's a lot quieter than it was. A lot quieter. Still sounds like a sewing machine, but no more of that rattle, 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 rattle. Not from either side. Both sides look good. Or I should say, both sides sound good. killed it. I'm beginning to think that it's just about right where it's at. When it warms up, it seems to be pretty good. Maybe not. Now, I don't know if I'm right here, but looking down here at the accelerator pump, when I hit the throttle, it looks like it might be binding up on the alternator and it's not turning all the way. That could be a great possibility why it's running too lean. But I'm going to look at this a little more closely with some light and see just what we got here, because it just looks to me like it's a little bit close. Now, if you're watching the video and you were paying real close attention, you probably noticed towards the end here that I was fiddling around in this area. And I was trying to gently press a screwdriver between the accelerator pump and the alternator, trying to give a little more clearance. That didn't seem to be enough to do it, but I think that thing may not be opening all the way. I may have to bend the linkage a little bit or something on it to make clearance. Well, anyway, I'm going to investigate. Well, that was it. The accelerator pump linkage wasn't hitting the alternator. It was just sticking to itself. So I just worked it a little bit, got it unbound, and now it's moving freely. I'll spray a little bit of key blaster or something on it, give it a little lube. But currently it's free, and I wish I left the camera running while I was experimenting here. But no sooner I got it started, watch this. All of my stumbling problems are now gone. That took out that last little bit of stumble that I had. I don't think I need to upgrade the jet anymore. I think we're right where we need to be. No more backfiring, no more sputtering, no more choking. It returns to idle. It doesn't hang above idle or drop below idle after you rev it up. I think that nailed it. That thing is running bang on good. think my alternator clamp here, the alternator strap, might be a little bit loose because it looks like the fan shroud is moving when I rev it up. So I'll have to check on that, but that's a minor detail. Fact is, it runs and runs good. Still, that has me super satisfied. Well, you saw it here today yourself, kiddies. This thing is running excellent. Excellent. Few of the details that I worked on today was getting the valves properly set. I don't know what the hell I did wrong. I might have used the wrong feeler gauge. It didn't make any sense to me. When I went in there and I put everything back the way it belongs, the engine is now no longer noisy. It's running much more smoothly than it was before. And after that, I went and I adjusted the idle mixture, because I noticed that when I opened up the throttle just a little bit above idle, it would start to stumble. And it turned out that the idle was too rich. So I snugged it up about 2 turns, and all of a sudden it started to come around again. I held it open in that throttle position while I tightened that screw, and all of a sudden it came back to life. And then I started running it wide open, and didn't seem to make too much of a difference on the idle screw. Sometimes it can if you have that way out of whack. But while I was working on that, I looked at the accelerator pump linkage, and when I hit the throttle, I noticed it would just kind of stop at one point. Now, you know, there's a spring in there that stops it from going too far. Stops it from binding on itself, essentially. But once it hit a certain point, it would push into the spring. The accelerator pump wasn't pushing open all the way. I get about half a pump out of it, which was okay if you only give smaller throttle positions, but when you go for the wide open, it wasn't going to do it. You needed just that little bit more fuel. Anyway, I managed to free up the linkage. I just put a screwdriver in there and worked it back and forth, and all of a sudden, whatever was in it, it let go. And now it has full range of motion when I go ahead and open the throttle. So this thing runs good. It runs really good. Well, only a proper driving test will tell me how good it's really running. I might end up still making the main jet a little bigger, or maybe even just a size or 2 smaller. But seeing as how satisfied I am with it right now, I'm going to leave it alone. I did not have to take that carburetor apart today, and that's a step in the right direction. This thing is, I'm going to say 99% where it needs to be. So I need to get these brakes finalized with A-Bomb 79 and get a few adjustments made with that. I need to pull the shift rod out of the tunnel and replace the bushings on it, as well as the shift coupler. Put it all back together, drop a seat in it, bleed out the brakes, and guess what? Put it all back together, bleed out the brakes, put a seat in it, put the steering column onto the pan, and this pan is going for a ride down the street. So that's not too far off in the future. Anyway, I got to get with A-Bomb and find out what his schedule is so he can make the final adjustments to these brakes for me. And we'll see what happens from there. But anyways, like, comment, subscribe, pluck that dingle belly next to the subscribe button. That way you get updates every time I run a new video. And don't forget, check out Duckman Cycles VW Garage up on the Facebook group page. Check out VV the Duck VV if you want to see my midday Q&A. So if you have any questions as to anything that you saw in this video, I'll try to address it for you and answer it over on my other channel. So you want to subscribe. The same name, VV the Duck VV, is also my Instagram. And check out Skeeter the Duck. You know, check her out. My little girl has her own Facebook page, and we're going to try to put a weekly update on there, so you need to see what's going on in her little life. If you'd like to email me, duckmancycles@duckshit.net. Thanks a lot, you guys. We'll talk to you later. I was going to add some music to the end of the video here as we go out, but I figured what better soundtrack than this. Love this little cap that came with that brand new carburetor. Sure is nice to just cap that off. It gives me a whole lot more clearance to push this engine underneath the body when it goes back in the garage. And this is how you recharge a little poop machine.